Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Gallant Few podcast. This is a special today. We have a very special guest with us this afternoon, and Derek Clark from the Rangers Review. Shall we clash you as Rangers royalty, Derek Clark? I nearly called you
No
David
chance.
there. And if anyone doesn't know, Derek Clark is from the Rangers Review. He does the morning briefing every morning. I highly recommend you go and check it out. It's a really good podcast. There's obviously more to it than that. He's got Joshua Barry and Stevie Clifford and I think it's Chris Jack and Johnny McFarlane on there as well. So, but look, I'm glad to obviously have you on board today, Derek, and thanks for coming along and joining us on the Gallant Few podcast.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words, Shona. It's good to be on. I know you guys do great work as well, covering our great club. So, yeah, good to be on to talk all things Rangers, especially after yesterday. I think everyone's got a smile on their face this morning.
Aye, definitely.
Yeah, I think everyone's waking up this morning with a smile on their face. It's different from the Mondays of old, isn't it? About 6 weeks ago. So, yeah, looking forward to obviously having a chat with you, Derek, today and talking all things Rangers and obviously our new manager, Philippe Clement. And I think Scotty's got a few questions he'd like to fire over to you. So I'll let you go ahead, Scotty.
Hi, Derek. First thing I want to ask you about, what's your opinion on our style of play? We don't seem to be. I was watching some of the build-up play yesterday. They don't seem to be taking any more than 2 touches, and they seem to be passing the ball forward a lot more. What's your take on it?
Pretty much that, Scott. I think it's more direct, isn't it? It's better to watch. I think when Rangers were looking for a new manager, one of the stipulations was just make football entertaining again, make fans want to turn up at Ibrox every other week to watch the team. I think we've been watching turgid football for too long. The tail end of Gio's tenure, I know when Michael Beale came in, he got some decent results, but the football wasn't good to watch, was it? And then this season, it was really, really poor. And like you say, those turgid performances, those lateral passes that the new manager said when he came in, he was looking to change that and being brave on the ball. I think the players are now being brave on the ball and looking to break between the lines and take gambles and take players on. I think we've seen it a lot in midweek. I was really impressed with Rangers up at Dens Park when we've seen the likes of Balogun, who came out from nowhere, and Goldson marauding forward. We've not seen that for some time as well, haven't we? So, yeah, I think it's just better to watch. I think, like I say, there's Rangers seem to have an intensity and a real rush to get forward now, which wasn't the case under Michael Beale. It's all right having 75% possession, but if you're not going to do anything with it, then it can become quite boring and poor to watch, especially in the stands. We've seen that at the tail end of his managerial career at Ibrox, where folk are just wanting to see a bit more entertainment. As an entertainment business at the end of the day. I know results are the be-all and end-all, but we want to be entertained, and Philippe Clement came in and almost immediately he's got the team firing. We all thought that the squad, we know it was a rebuild in the summer, and we all thought it was going to need another rebuild to get rid of some of the signings that came in the summer, but he's worked wonders in just a few weeks since coming in, and you're thinking it's not as big a job, I think, on his hands as what we previously thought. So fair credit to the manager. I know he's been saying he's drip feeding information to the players, not giving them too much information too soon, which I think is the correct way forward. But it's clear he's getting into their heads and he's just giving them more confidence. You see that when we hear from, I know John Lundstrom's comments yesterday, Ben Davis, when he was up for the press last week. You hear from others, James Tavernier as well, says it, that not just individually, but collectively, he's just giving the team that little bit of a boost. I know John Lundstrom said it's a little bit, he's been like a breath of fresh air, which tells you all you need to know. I think he's just giving them clarity. They know their jobs now. They know that they look like it was a bit of a mess under Michael Beale this season. I don't think anyone was aware of what Rangers were trying to do, but it's clear what they are doing now. They've got a proper football manager in place, and he's getting a tune out of these players, which is good to see.
Aye, definitely. Shona, I'm going to come to you quickly. See what Derek was saying there about Leon Balogun coming in. I'm kind of getting off topic just ever so slightly for a couple of minutes. With Leon Balogun coming in, when him and Ridvan are playing, they seemed a lot more stable at the back. To me, it's enhanced the need for a kind of longer term centre back for Connor Goldson in a partnership. I think we need a wee bit of experience at the back. What's your thoughts for January? What do you think the team needs?
I don't know at the moment if the team really needs a centre back as their main priority. I think obviously that would be something we'll have to definitely look at coming obviously with the injuries that we're picking up in the centre back. But I think, to be honest, I think the biggest thing for me in January will probably be the wingers. I think what he needs to do is obviously you've got the likes of Matondo hopefully coming back from injury, which I think Matondo is going to be a massive player for under Clement, the way Clement wants to play his style of football. You've obviously got Sima there as well, and then you've obviously got Scott Wright, who's obviously been a bit of a revived player. But I think the priority in January will probably tend to look at getting more pace down those wings. Whether that's trying to go and get Sima on a full term contract, whether we'll be able to afford that, I still think we should still go and try and get that. But for me, I think the centre back is probably one of these ones where we're always going to have issues with, because we've always had injuries with the centre backs, haven't we? With the likes of Balogun, we had Golson out for quite a long term injury. Davis seems to be in and out of the squad. So look, I definitely think that the centre back is something that we'll have to look at. Whether that'll be his main priority, I'm not too sure. I think his main priority in January we'll probably be looking at wingers, because I think with what we looked at yesterday, even though when Scott Wright came on, what a difference he made when he came on that pitch. And it wasn't just obviously his energy, it was the way he was able to get by the players, his pace as well. So for me, I think Philippe Clement will probably he'll have the opportunity now to look at all these players. I think he said in the press there yesterday that every single player is not guaranteed to play in this final, which I think is a really good thing. I think back in under Beale and under Gio, you kind of knew that even if you're playing week in, week out, it didn't really matter. You were still going to play in that final. Don't think that's going to happen under Clement, unfortunately. I think Clement likes to change his team week in, week out. And I think that gives the opportunity for players to keep that mentality, keep that winning mentality, and take their chance when they get it on the pitch. So I think when it comes to January, for me, I think I'd be looking more at wingers and getting pace down that side of the pitch. I'm unsure what Derek Clark thinks about that, but I don't know if the centre back would be his main priority. Obviously, I think we do need to look at that in the future, but whether that'll be a priority in January, I'm not too sure.
I agree, Shona. I think wingers, is one area of the pitch Rangers will look to strengthen. And like you say, I'm wanting to see Matondo back, see if Clement can get a tune out of him. I'm sure he can. He was the one shining light, wasn't he, that this season before Clement came in. Centre back, yeah, I think someone alongside in that left-sided position. I know that Balogun played at the weekend, but he is getting on a bit. Can we rely on him? Ben Davis, I'm a fan of Ben Davis. I like him. I think he can contribute. But I think Rangers possibly need one more in there. We know John Souttar's out at this moment in time. He's had his own injury problems over the years. It's just it's typical, isn't it, that Phil Hollander leaves and now he's a regular for his club side and he's playing for Sweden again. I'm sure he would walk into this Rangers team. Wonder if Clement fancies contacting Odense and bringing him home, perhaps. But someone of that ilk, I think, might be on the shopping list come January. I think he will get money to spend. I don't think he needs wholesale changes like I touched on earlier. I think perhaps 2 or 3 additions in January. There may be 1 or 2 heading out the door as well. And it remains to be seen if Rangers get a director of football in place for that January transfer window. Of course, speaking to, I can't remember who it was, a Belgian journalist at the time told me that Clement is used to working with a sporting director. He's more of a coach as opposed to someone that goes out there and identifies players. So that'll be interesting come January time. But yeah, I certainly think wingers and a centre half might be on the shopping list.
I would definitely agree with that. Derek, what's your thoughts on John Lundstrom? In me, yesterday there was a clip I seen him just galloping up the park, stretching his legs, showing a bit of box to box, which we all thought we were getting when we signed him. Rangers have utilised him more as a number 6. What's your thoughts on his performances under Philippe Clement?
I think he's been superb, to be honest with you. I know he's in the final year of his deal, and there's a lot of talk about whether he's deserving of a new one. I think if he keeps this sort of form up, then I would have no hesitation in giving him a contract extension. He's been superb. I think like Matondo, I thought he was steady this season. Not one of the poorer performers, but under Clement, there just seems, like I touched on earlier, a bit of clarity. He's now breaking between the lines and offering that energy, like you say, box to box, getting up the pitch. It was interesting. His he was in the mix zone yesterday, and Joshua spoke to him and asking about the confidence that the manager is giving him. He says he's just been a breath of fresh air, and he says the mood around the place is just so much better as well, which tells you everything you need to know. And I think he's just getting the best, not only out of Lundstrom, but every player at this moment in time. I think there's a togetherness at Rangers that hasn't been seen for some time. And Lundstrom is really benefiting. I think he's one of the first names in the team sheet now, such as his performances, and I think he's certainly earned that spot at this moment. He's been up and down, hasn't he, since he joined? I think when he first kicked off, everyone was expecting him to be offloaded 6 months later in the January. I think Sheffield United, or was it Middlesbrough at the time, are credited with an interest, but he stayed around. Then he became the best player on the planet in that run to Seville, and then he sort of tailed off the following season, had a pretty poor campaign, and he's historically come good come the end of the season, but I think he's been pretty good this season. If he can keep that form up, then it bodes well for the rest of the season, I think. So, yeah, pretty pleased with how John Lundstrom's playing at this moment.
Shona, what's your thoughts on John Lundstrom? How do you think he's got better, or if you want to call it finally arrived at, because that's how it seems to me?
I think what the first thing that Philippe Clement's done is just install belief into these players, and I think what that's really, really showing on the park. I think whenever I thought of John Lundstrom was that I think it's down to our style of play. For instance, when we've obviously scored that first goal in previous games or under Beale and under previous managers, we tend to kind of sit back and we tend to try and control the game and try and hit the guys on the counter afterwards, and we tend to take our time over it. Whereas I think under Philippe Clement, we seem to go for the jugular. I think we scored 3 goals in 15 minutes yesterday. And I think that really suits John Lundstrom. I think for me, what John Lundstrom in the past was really like one of his weakest points was he was taking too many touches on the ball when he was in the kind of defensive area, when he was playing that kind of defensive midfielder role, and then he was getting caught out at times. And by that, when it happened, a lot of the teams were able to create chances from that. And I think for me, I think John Lundstrom just looks so much better on the ball. I think as well he's been able to get the passes. When he's picking a pass, he's not passing it sideways. He's actually trying to be a bit more direct as well with his thing. And I think for one thing for John Lundstrom that any manager can say, and I think we can say this season, he's probably our most consistent, most reliable midfielder we've got, because every other midfielder that we've got in our team are either out injured. So I think he's one of these guys that you can actually rely on. And I think for me, what I'm getting from him, that when obviously speaking about his interview yesterday, it seems like he's back in his happy place now. He seems like he likes that leadership. He wants to take it on. He seems to be in a much happier place. And I think that's maybe the reason why is because fans were getting on his back every time he was making a poor pass and a poor decision that was causing a lot of the fans were getting on his back. Whereas I think now, because he's making more forward passes, when he does make a mistake, I don't think the fans are getting on his back as much. I think they're actually going with him because they can see that obviously his performances, I think, under Clement in the last 4 or 5 games have been different class. I think for me, he's the one that's really, really showing up. Obviously, we can speak about Balogun and Scott Wright, but for me, John Lundstrom has really stepped up to the mark. And I just feel as if yesterday when I was watching his post-match presser, I felt as if from him, you can see that he's enjoying his football now.
He just looked happy, didn't he? He genuinely just looked happy in that presser. For me, it's Rangers tend to sign English Premiership players kind of once every couple of years when we can get a deal. Obviously, when we get Scott Arfield in, there was a lot of excitement. And when John Lundstrom followed a couple of years later, there was a lot of excitement around Lundstrom. To me, it does seem as if he's finally arrived. There's a lot of clarity in his role, as you guys are saying. And he seems to be getting on players' backs a wee bit more as well. He's trying to drive standards, and that's something I've not seen from him since probably the Scottish Cup semi-final against Celtic under Gio. So that's good to see. So hopefully he can continue his good performances. Derek, I'm going to come back to you. What's your thoughts on a revival of Scott Wright?
Quite incredible, really. I think everyone was expecting him to head away in the summer when we seen that interview at Glasgow Airport when he was jetting off to Turkey, wasn't he? And then no idea why that move never materialised. But anyway, ends up back at Rangers. I don't think anyone would have expected to see him again when he gets sent off against Aberdeen, and what turned out to be Beale's final game in charge. But here he is, scoring goals, getting Rangers into Cup finals, which is quite amazing, really. It's been some story about when Clement came in, he says every player's got a clean slate, and he's taken to Scott Wright. I thought his comments yesterday were interesting. I think it was a surprising substitution at half-time. I had him, we do our predicted lineups before every game, and I had him in my starting 11. I thought he would have a role to play yesterday from the start, but the manager electing to go with Cantwell and Lammers. But I think when Cantwell comes off, people were thinking Scott Wright, really, but he just loves playing at Hampden, doesn't he, and scoring goals against Hearts, and he showed it again yesterday. Fantastic strike, and he's really stepped up to the plate. And like Lundstrom we just touched on earlier, I think the manager's just giving them clarity, giving them confidence to wear that Rangers jersey. Sometimes he gets a bit of criticism with his final ball and his delivery, but I think if he can keep up this sort of momentum, this level of form, I don't think there'll be too many complaints. So he's contributing, which is terrific. I'm sure he'll have a part to play on Thursday night as well. So yeah, it's quite amazing, really, how he was heading towards the exit door, and now he's playing a key role in this new look Rangers team. It just shows you football can throw up all sorts of different scenarios. But yeah, delighted with Wright yesterday, and hopefully continue that.
Shona, what's your thoughts? Obviously, I was surprised at half-time yesterday when I saw that it was Cantwell that had get taken off and Scott Wright had come on. Obviously, that's credit to the manager. His substitutions have come off for him on this occasion. Were you surprised at that substitution at half-time yesterday?
I think everyone was a wee bit surprised, but obviously when the manager came out and said that Cantwell was already on a yellow, and I don't know about you guys, but I feel as if Cantwell really hasn't hit the heights of what he did last season. I think he's been a wee bit inconsistent this year. I think obviously you see the nice touches. I think he had a really nice shot in the first half. The keeper made a really good save at his near post from. But apart from that, I don't think Cantwell really showed much in that first half. I know everybody's been saying, well, he should be playing in the number 10 role, but every time he's came on the pitch recently, I don't really think he's contributed what he really should be contributing. I think when Cantwell is on his A game, he's absolutely untouchable. And he scores his brilliant goals, and he can set us up really, really nice assists as well. But I think this season so far, I think he's been quite inconsistent. I think Cantwell needs to obviously take a step up. But yeah, I was a wee bit surprised in the substitution. But I mean, honestly, Scott Wright was a contender for man of the match yesterday. I think that was a goal. And would you class that as an assist with the obviously he managed to get the free kick outside the box in which Tab scored from? So like I think what I've noticed like under Clement so far, which I kind of said earlier on, is that he's given every single player a chance. But it's up to you to take that chance. And if you do take that chance, you've got an opportunity now to really step up and get into obviously the first team or be on the bench. I think with Scott Wright in the past is that he was always been a bench warmer. He's always been the kind of either the guy that was sitting on the bench or not even in the squad at all. And that can't help your mentality. That can't help your confidence either. And I think what Clement is decided to do is that if you're having a bad game one week, the likelihood is you won't be playing the week after. So if you take your opportunity, the likelihood is you probably will be in the team the next week. The one thing for me with Clement is you just don't know who's going to line up. I'm surprised, obviously, Derek Clark has said there you predicted a lineup. I can't predict a lineup under Clement because, as far as I'm concerned, he decides how his style of play will be, or the way he picks his players will depend on how he wants to set up for the opposition to exploit their weaknesses. And obviously, he must have thought in that first half yesterday there was a lot of space that we were not exploiting. So I think under the first half it's about tiring out the Hearts players, and then obviously getting your pace on like your Scott Wright to come on and exploit that space. And honestly, fair play to the boy. The boy's come in and he's absolutely worked wonders. Do you know what I mean with Scott Wright? And as I says, you can't fault his display yesterday, and you can't fault his display midweek. And the one thing I think what Rangers fans have always asked for is that everybody wanted Scott Wright to be like the Scotty Arfield, didn't they? But what Scott Wright has never really done is shown that desire, that effort, that 90 minutes of what every Rangers fan wants to see. And that's just giving them 100% effort. We don't mind if you have an off game, but as long as you give 100% in every game and we can see that you're working hard for the team, that's all that really matters for fans. And I think what you can see with Scott Wright is that he's now building that working hard. He's tracking back, he's putting himself about. And I think that's what people obviously loved about Scotty Arfield. And we always said we wanted the Scotty Arfield and Scott Wright. And I think we're now beginning to see this. And I think what, like I said with Philippe Clement, is that he doesn't know who's going to be picking week out. So these players need to be on it all the time, and their mentality has to be exactly the same, because otherwise you will not be in that squad the week after.
Derek, back to Todd Cantwell. What's your thoughts on Sam Lammers? He's obviously started I think he started every match since Philippe Clement's come in. Do you think he's trying to figure out a way to get Cantwell and Lammers playing together?
Maybe, but it doesn't work. I'm not a fan of Sam Lammers so far. I know he scored a beauty against Dundee, but he's a good player technically. He's top notch, but he doesn't fit in this Rangers team for me. The game passes him by. He wants too many touches on the ball, slows things down. I would have Cantwell ahead of him every day of the week, even though he's not on form, as Shona says. But I don't know what it is about Lammers. The manager obviously sees something in training. I was surprised to see him start on Sunday, but I can understand why he is starting him, like you say, because he's playing him pretty much every game. So he must see something in him. I don't see it. I don't know this experiment of playing Lammers and Cantwell out in the right, I don't think it works entirely. Well, we've seen the change being made at half time, and I think Clement deserves credit for that. And what I like about it as well is the manager is proactive with his substitutions. One of the criticisms levelled at Beale was he's very reactionary with his substitutions. He'll often wait too late before making changes, whereas Clement, he'll notice something and he'll make a change. Well, it's quite a controversial one, I know, yesterday, where I don't think many would have envisaged that, but he got it spot on. But Lammers, he and Dessers, for me, have been two costly signings in the summer, and they've failed massively to live up to their price tags. I think if they came in on free transfers, then they wouldn't be getting as much criticism, but both have to do a lot more to win the fans round and earn their place in this Rangers team. I know that Danilo's came in for Dessers recently, and rightly so. I think he offers so much more than Cyril Dessers, but Lammers, to me, need to see a lot more from him. And I think we've all gave him a lot of time now to integrate into this Rangers team, and he's just not doing the business. I think it's a mentality issue with him, or perhaps just how he's used to playing football. I don't think it suits this Rangers style at this moment in time. So that's certainly a conundrum for the manager to figure out, because it's not working for me.
Yeah, I would need to agree with that. Shona, on to Ross McCausland. What role do you see this young boy getting going forward under Clement?
Well, I think Clement's come out and said, hasn't he, that he obviously wants to instill the youth into the team at some point. So I think we'll see a gradual build-up of Ross McCausland in the team. From what I've seen in the B team, he's obviously been one of the most outstanding players for the B team as well. His level from going from the B team to the first team has been extraordinary, to be honest. I think he's really taken that next level, and he's really taken to it. For me, I was always thought he was going to come on yesterday. I was actually quite surprised he didn't even come on, even though we were 3-1 up. So whether the manager, I'm just obviously Clement we trust, you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, he'll know exactly what he wants out of the team. And obviously he opted to go for Scott Wright over McCausland. I think a lot of fans would have had McCausland over Scott Wright a couple of weeks ago. So look, for me, I think what the manager needs to do is try and fit him into the right kind of game. At the moment, I don't think he's probably a first team starter. I think he won't be on the team sheet, but I do think he'll be able to come off the bench, and I do think he'll be able to have that impact when he does come off the bench, whether that's in Europe or whether that's in the league. So no, I think it will all be about how he performs in training, and if the manager sees what he does in training, I'm pretty certain that he will get his opportunities this year. Same with the likes of Bailey Rice. I think he'll obviously get some opportunities as well. So it just really depends on what the manager's thoughts are. But for me, I think McCausland, his development from the B team to the first team has been really, really good. And obviously you want to keep that up, you want to keep that mentality, and you want to keep that hunger going for him. So I think maybe this weekend you might see, because obviously we've got the game in Europe this year, you might see obviously him coming on as a substitution in Europe. You obviously might see him coming on at the weekend. So I'd expect to see Ross McCausland at some point this week come on as either a sub in one of the games. So, but no, I'm quite glad that the manager has installed the youth, and you do see a lot of the youth players on the bench, especially when it was was it midweek or in Europe? We had quite a lot. I know obviously a lot of that was down to injuries, but at least the manager. I've been to a few of the B team games. I think obviously I think I've told you about this, Scott, as well. and the Clement's there with the assistant manager for the full 90 minutes. So that's a really, really good positive thing as well. But I just do think that with the B team players, it will be a gradual build up to get them into the first team, and it's up to them to fight for their place if they really want it.
Derek, I'll come on to you with the same kind of question. Is there any youth prospects you think we're going to see before the kind of end of the season? Anybody that can kind of force their way in?
McCausland's one, and I like how the manager's not afraid to play them. We've seen last week against Hearts at Ibrox where the game was in jeopardy, and yet he still brought him on and he done really well. Other ones that come to mind, of course, is young Bailey Rice. I want to see more of him if possible. I think the lad's got a bright future ahead of him. Zach Lovelace, prior to getting injured at St Mirren, was looking good also. Hopefully his injury isn't keeping him out for much longer, because I think we'd all like to see more of young Zach as well. And others that you're thinking of that haven't really had an opportunity for some time. Leon King, of course. Adam Devine's there. We know Alex Lowry's out on loan at Hearts, and there was a bit of debate whether Rangers should maybe look to bring him back in January. I think that's a decent discussion, but if he's not maybe playing as much as Hearts, then I don't know if he'll get an opportunity at Rangers. Saying that, I would have him over Sam Lammers, that's for sure. But those are the players. I think Rice is Lovelace when he gets back fit, and McCausland are the ones I think might get an opportunity under the manager going forward until the end of the season. And they're exciting players as well. I think that they've certainly done well whenever we've seen them pull on that Rangers jersey. So those are the ones. Devine and King are interesting ones for me. Like Lowry, I'd have sent them out on loan at the start of the season. I don't think there's any. I think they're too good for the B team. I mean, they're not playing Lowland League, but I think they're too good for the Lowland League anyway. So for me, I'd have sent them out on loan to teams either down south or abroad, just to move away from home. And I think it aids their development a bit more when they're moving away and playing in different leagues. I think that would have done them both the world of good, but is what it is. And we haven't really seen either of them. So that might be a decision for the manager come January time. If their pathway is going to be blocked, then perhaps loan moves might be the way forward.
Right, okay. I can't see Lowry getting called back. I think what he's doing at Hearts is what we need. What he needs, to be honest. I think he's making the errors and he's making good contributions. There's a couple of times you've seen his potential come to the fore. I think loaning players to our own league. I think Leon King and Devine should have went out on loan to other SPFL sides. So we'll see how he moves forward on it. Game management. Shona, what was your take on what I was impressed with yesterday was when Hearts scored when 3-1 up, we were still attacking. And that's what you expect. What's your thoughts on how we handled that situation after Shanklin scored the penalty?
Yeah, I think what I've noticed under Clement so far, I think under other managers, I think I've said this previously, that we tend to kind of sit back after we've scored, and we tend not to go for the juggler. We tend to have a lot of, I would say, as if it's like we lose our belief. You know, that way you've just scored a goal, you think you'd be on a high, you want to go for the second goal, but for some reason we tend to kind of sit back. We tend to take a lot more passes. We tend to be a bit more kind of reserved in what we're trying to do. That allows the opposition to kind of obviously get themselves back into position, allows them to get them settled. Whereas I've always said this before, as soon as you score that goal, and obviously the opposition are all over the place. Their heads are all over the place. They don't know how to get themselves back into position. I think it's the ideal opportunity, do you know what I mean, to go and then try and score more goals. And I think what I've noticed under Clement is he's not happy with us just scoring in that one goal. He wants us to keep going and attacking and get that second, get that third. And I think that's what's really, really refreshing to see, because I think under past managers, we've really struggled with some teams to score that second goal, especially if we go a goal behind. I've always said this before. For some reason, when Rangers go a goal behind or there's a VAR decision against us, we always seem to crumble. And I think what's been really refreshing so far is that those 3 goals in the first 15 minutes totally killed that game off. And that meant then that Hearts then had to come out and attack us. They were absolutely knackered by that point, and that kind of opened up spaces and gaps in the midfield and the attack for us to exploit. And I feel as if that's the one thing that I think the manager's going to try and install more, is that when we do score that first goal, or if we do get a penalty against us, is to keep going. Just keep going. Don't start going back into your shell. Don't be reserved. Be positive. Get those direct passes going. And obviously, this is about this whole mentality, about trying to get the mentality with the players and obviously with the fans as well on board. Because I think under previous managers, when we've gone a goal behind or another team has scored, you can hear the silence, you can hear the grunts in the crowd, don't you? You can hear them all getting a wee bit frustrated at times. And I think with under Clement is that I found that when we've got that second and third goal, we're all a bit more relaxed. I even think even when it comes to defending corners as well, previously under managers, I think most fans have been had their hands over their eyes. You know what I mean? Watching every corner that was coming into our box. Is it going to be another goal against us? Even when we got to maybe like the 90th minute and we were drawing games, and then all of a sudden the opposition are giving us a hard time in the last 10 minutes. I think now we're a bit more comfortable and we're a bit more settled when we get the ball, and when we go 2-3-0 up, we can still go and get that other goal. But for me, I think under Clement, I think so far what I've seen is that we don't want to just go for the one goal. We want to get 3 or 4, and that's a good thing when it comes to Rangers, because I think over the other side of the city, what they've been really, really good at is they've not been playing well, and we've not been playing well, but for some reason we end up getting a draw, or we end up dropping points, or we lose a game. What they tend to do is they tend to go and then win the game, whether that's in the last minute of the game or whatever. And I think that now what we're seeing under Clement is that we've got no fear now, guys. I think now what we need to do is install that fear into the other teams that are the other opposition teams that we're playing against, and hopefully that will happen as soon as they come to Ibrox. Because I think under the other side of the city, the other teams that are in the league, they've been fear for them because they don't want to lose 4 or 5-0. I think when they come to us, they feel as if they can just turn up against us. It's, as I said, it's like Aberdeen and all that. It's their cup final, isn't it? And when they turn up to Ibrox, they seem to give it all. And if we can manage to install that fear into the other teams, I think, like I said before, I think if we can do really, really well this season, towards now and towards the end of the year, because we've got a lot of away games coming up, if we can get through this tough period, guys, and get into that Old Firm game pretty much on the same points as Celtic, I'm pretty confident that we could go into that game and win that.
Derek, what's your thoughts on the kind of apparent shift in mentality? Obviously, the players do seem a wee bit stronger mentally. We've seen it so far. What's your thoughts on the kind of game management side of things?
Yeah, and the fans are more optimistic now, heading into, like Shona says, this it's quite a difficult run of fixtures on paper. Some away trips there that you're looking could be difficult matches, but you just feel under this manager that the squad are in a good place, and you fancy Rangers going to these venues and taking maximum points. So I don't have much trepidation and as much fear as I would have under the previous management team. And before, I was one thinking, listen, 7 points, that's maybe right off the league this season. But since Clement's came in, he's reduced the gap almost immediately, and there's renewed optimism where folk are now thinking, hold on a wee minute. As Shona says there, you'll go to Parkhead if you're 5 points behind. If Rangers go there and take something, then it's game on for me. So he's just instilled that belief in the squad, as you touched on. I think there's players that were underperforming that are now performing for the new manager, which you often see. You get a new manager bounce, but it's whether Clement can sustain that. I think he can. I've been impressed every time I've listened to his press conferences. He's very animated on the touchline, which is, I know that doesn't mean you're going to win games, but fans like to see that, don't they? It just adds a bit more to the spectacle. So he kicks every ball, which is good. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, he's just a proper football manager. So you feel a lot safer and more comfortable going into these tricky matches. I mean, Livingston up next. Well, we've got Sparta Prague at home. The fancy Rangers take maximum points for the next 2 games in Europe. And then Livingston, of course, away. Although they have a decent record over there, the Tony Macaroni, you think to yourself, it's a tricky surface for Rangers to go on, but you just fancy them to go over there and do the business. And I think, as I touched on earlier, the players are getting little tidbits of information. I think they're being drip fed at this moment in time, and not to sort of flood their minds with too much. And I think that's working so far. So we're seeing improvements game by game, and hopefully come that Celtic game that they're firing in all cylinders, and they've got a League Cup in the trophy cabinet for the first time in 12 years, which is too long.
Aye, definitely. Shona, I think you've got a question for Derek, haven't you, before we finish up?
Yeah, just basically, obviously looking at the manager so far, and what would you say at the moment would be probably Philippe Clement under Philippe Clement? What can you pinpoint? What would be a success for him this year? And what do you think has been the biggest change in the squad so far under Clement? For me, I think it's been like you said, the wee things that he's been taking in the media. He's actually putting that out. So basically, what he said was that he's going to have a style of play. So far, we've been able to see a style of play. For instance, he says there that every single one of them has um, their own opportunity to obviously make it. And I just feel as if that's been the main thing for me with under Clement. What he's been saying in the media, he's actually been able to show it onto the pitch so far. What would you think is the biggest thing that has been the biggest change under Clement so far and the players?
I think reintroducing the cryo chamber has been a huge benefit, isn't it? That's been laying dormant for too long, I think. So well done, Philip, for reintroducing that. So I think he's went in there, like you say, I think the injury list is something that he wants to get to the bottom of as well, which I think is a good thing. He's got a real vested interest in the medical side of things. We know that the injury list in the past couple of seasons has been, I think it's arguably it cost Bailey's job. It certainly cost Gio's job having so many players out injured. So if you can get to the bottom of that, I think that'll be a good thing. But like you say, I think style of play is improved almost immediately. Rangers are now enjoyable to watch as opposed to being a chore, which hats off to the manager for that and for the information he's passing on to the players. In terms of expectations this season, League Cup is a must. That side, I want the Scottish Cup as well. The league, if he was to come second and close the gap, and we all want the league title, of course we do, but where he is at the moment in time, he came in, there were Rangers 7 points behind. If he can close that gap and make Rangers competitive up until the end of the season, I think that's progress for me. In terms of Europe, I think that'll take care of itself. I really fancy Rangers to qualify for the next round, and how far they go, that remains to be seen. But yeah, I fancy me to qualify for the latter stages of Europe, can get 2 cups and have a good old bash at the league title. I think most fans will be pretty content with that.
Aye, definitely. I think it's basically what you said, Derek. I think it's going to be 2 cups and a good bash at league, and everybody will be quite happy with that.
I don't think this is not a great Celtic side either. That's what sort of annoys me for that first Old Firm game. They were there for the taking, and if Clement was in charge, Rangers win that game. Now, I know that the Roof goal was a big turning point in it, but I was just, like many others, unhappy with the approach in that game. Rangers sat off and played like the away teams. I think Celtic were they've been delighted to come away with all 3 points in that one. But I think they struggled past St Mirren recently, didn't they, at home? I know they dropped points against Hibs as well. But I think they are not as formidable as they were last season. So I wouldn't be ruling out the league just yet.
No, definitely not.
I don't know if you think this, Derek. I don't know if you think this, Derek, but I feel as if this November and December is probably going to be the toughest 2 months for Clement, because you've got because you know what it's like when we come back after that winter break as well in January, but we've got so many away games. I think the only home games that we've got are the European ties, St Mirren and Dundee. Everybody else, we've got Aberdeen, we've got Hibs. Yeah. I think we've also got Motherwell and Celtic all away. I think for me, this is the biggest 2 months for Clement at the moment under his new reign as Rangers manager. I don't know if you think the same.
Yeah, listen, if he comes away with maximum points up to Celtic, then he's done a cracking job. But they're going to be tough games, and that's why he's talking about squad rotation and what have you, and managing players' minutes. He's not afraid to bring players out just to rest them. He touched on that after the game, of course. He's looking ahead to Thursday, which I thought was refreshing and giving players minutes. Great to see Tom Lawrence back, incidentally, in that game yesterday. That'll be touch wood, he can steer clear of injury. But yeah, it's going to be a tough test, and if he can reach that game at Parkhead, say 5 points behind, I think everyone would pretty much bite your hand off for that, because there are tricky games coming up. But Celtic as well, you wouldn't bet against them dropping points on the travels too. So it's going to be certainly a few hurdles to overcome, but you certainly feel confident, I think, under Clement, more so than you did under the previous regime, that Rangers can navigate through these potential banana skins, shall we say.
Yeah, definitely. Any final thoughts, Shona, before we close the show?
No, obviously, like I think, like you said, Derek, I think in the next couple of months for me, if we can get onto the same amount of points or getting near enough there with Celtic and going into that Old Firm, I think it gives us a really, really good stead for setting us up for the second half of the season. I think for me, the biggest worry for me is just when we come back from that winter break. I think under previous managers, we have really, really struggled to come back from that. So I think for me to keep that mentality with the players, as long as we can hopefully win that Old Firm game, we should go into that new year feeling good about ourselves, and hopefully that will kick us on. Because I do think that if we do go on to win that Old Firm game and it does take it down to 2 points, I think we're in for a really, really good second part of the season, guys. I really do. It just really depends on obviously the European games that will be in amongst that as well. But like Derek says, I think for me that the Scottish Cup and the League Cup's an absolute must. And I think, as you said, Derek, I think that the kind of league will kind of take care of itself. But I think for me, it's just about getting the mentality right with the players. I think I've been saying this for a while now under both managers, Gio and especially Beale. It's just that the mentality of these players, we were always questioning them under, are they going to be good enough for Rangers? And I think everybody was saying that we needed a rebuild and another rebuild, that way. But I think what the good thing under Clement is he's been able to install that really good mentality so far within the players. And most of the players have really taken their opportunities, and that's all we ask for, is to give 100% and take your opportunity whilst you can. But for me, it's just a case of under Clement, I really do not know what kind of lineup he's going to bring out week in, week out. I think that's the one that's going to be the biggest. There's always going to be a surprise in there, guys, I'm telling you. And everybody's going to go, what is he playing at? But I think at the moment, everything that he does at the moment is like magic. He's like her Harry Potter at the moment, isn't he? He's a magician. So, like I said, I think I said on one of the things the other day, he can do what he likes. Is Philippe Clement, because we're all living in the world that he lives in at the moment. So, as long as he continues to do that, I think every Rangers fan is happy. And what I do like is the fact that the fans are now happy. I think you can see that as well in most games. He's really installing this this family that he keeps on going on about, these leaders on the pitch. And I think that in family is obviously installing the fans as well. And he's trying to get the good atmosphere back. And you can really, really tell that even if a player does make a mistake, you don't really hear the grunts from the crowd. We're kind of spurring them on, and I think that can only be a positive thing going forward. So, look, guys, thanks very much, Derek, for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season under Philippe Clement.
Aye, thanks for coming on, Derek.
Thank you for having me. It's great to talk all things Rangers, as I mentioned. It's always good when we've got something positive to talk about, isn't it? After so many months of depressing Rangers ruining your weekends, but the good times seem to be around the corner once again. So roll the one. And Derek, can you just tell everybody and that's obviously maybe watching this podcast later where they can find you and what kind of work you can do on it every morning on the Rangers Review? You can do your wee plug now. Thank you. Yeah, you can find us on YouTube, folks, or Facebook. We've got our morning briefing, which is 9:30, Monday to Friday. So we're on every morning talking all things Rangers. You touched on earlier, myself, Joshua, Stevie, Chris, and Johnny's on from time to time as well. So that's great fun to do. We're also on Twitter. You can find us if you just search for Rangers Review. And it's just great fun to do. We've been doing it for just over 2 years now. And it's great. Love the interaction with the punters and all that message in. So there's worse jobs out there than talking about Rangers every day. So it's a pleasure. So if you want to join us, then 9:30 on YouTube every morning, folks.
Well, thanks very much, Derek, for coming on. I really appreciate it, and hopefully to many more. And I'm a big, massive Stevie Clifford fan, so if you can get Stevie on, I'd be over the moon. I'd be definitely doing the podcast with Stevie Clifford. So give him a wee shout out from me. Thanks.
No worries.
Right, thanks, guys.